Hey everybody, this is Randy Mantooth, or maybe you all know me as Johnny Gage from Emergency. Greg Rundle has asked me to welcome you to the Mercy Ambulance reunion. I just want to thank you, and I want to salute you for your career choice. Whether you're a paramedic or an EMT, this is not a job for everyone, as you probably well know. I speak to firefighters, paramedics, EMTs, ER doctors, and ER nurses all over the country, and I tell them every time that there are three qualities that every firefighter, every paramedic, every EMT, ER doctor, ER nurse have to do this job, and that is courage, compassion, and caring. And I think that all of you have those three qualities. And I want to thank you for what you do, and I want to salute you for what you do. And I also want you to have a heck of a lot of fun tonight. I wish I could be with you. There's a lot of things in life that I don't do right, but I can celebrate well. So this is my loss. So maybe next time. All right, that's it, guys. Have a good night tonight, and maybe I'll see you on down the road. KMG 365. Squad 51, out.
Las Vegas clear. Unit, stand by to copy and call.
Las Vegas, 1950. If you needed an ambulance, there's a good chance you'd find yourself saying, "Are they going to save me or bury me?" as a hearse pulls up.
I was not trained. I was not a PMT. I was not an EMT. I didn't know what I was doing.
Alan's father owned Bunker Mortuary and two dual-purpose hearses, but he wanted out of the ambulance business. One day in 1953, a retired Army medic showed up named Bud Bishop.
Come live in the back of the mortuary, use our ambulances, and learn the city and learn the business by yourself. He sold the two ambulances to them for $1 a piece.
And that's the day Mercy Ambulance was born. For 19-year-old Dennis Larson, it was just a summer job as a dispatcher. But soon he realized he was growing up much faster than he thought.
At that time, Ernie Moore was the owner of the business, and he called me in the office one day, and he said, "You ever thought of riding rigs?" And I said, "Well, yeah." And he says, "Have you got any kind of first aid experience?" I said, "Well, I'm a Boy Scout. I got an advanced first aid card." He said, "Well, that's all you need." He says, "But you're not old enough. You got to be 21. And I said, "Okay, well," I figured that was the end of it. I went back out, and a day or so later, he called me back in the office, and he hands me a business an employment application. And he said, "I need you to sign this here." And I said, "Well, I've already filled one of those out." And he says, "No, you need to sign this." And I looked down at it, and I said, "Well, you've got my date of birth wrong on this." And he says, "I tell you, just sign the application and go about your business." And so the application made me 21 years old. So he says, "Now if you want to ride the rigs," he says, you're good to go. But you had to go to the health department, get a health card and some other things. And he says, "Just go over there and don't tell them anything. Just give them the application." He says, "You'll be fine." And so after a process of a week and keeping my mouth shut, I went over, and next thing I know is I got an ambulance driver attendant card and through the health department, and I was out riding the rigs.
Ralph Gilliam recalls in 1971, not much more than desire was required to work the streets.
I was looking for a new job. I'd just graduated with an AS in biomedical electronics, and at that time, Mercy was mainly Mercy Medical Supply. A friend of mine that worked for the ambulance division asked me if I wanted to take a ride along when I was coming back in from a service call. And I said, "Sure, why not? I've never been in an ambulance before, never even really seen anybody injured." From that time on, just about every day that I could, I was riding with the crews and learning to be some kind of a medic.
We evolved from having an advanced first aid card and just doing the minimum you could do. Again, you would set broken bones as best you could. We used some state-of-the-art stuff they had back then, and we would stop the bleeding. You start to breathe into an airway on them or something like that. And then finally, Dr. John Batdorf and Dr. Russell Douglas approached the Ernie Moore and the folks that were at Mercy Ambulance at the time, and they were starting this an EMT program, and nobody had ever heard anything like that. And so they picked a group of us from Mercy and the fire department, and we went through a school that lasted probably doing it in the evenings and a couple of days a week, better part of 6 months. But there was a lot of evolving from what we started out with. I mean, EMT was the best you could get. We were starting to intubate people. They had taught us how to do that, and it was kind of an add-on to the EMT program. And there was a couple of doctors at UMC, when it was Southern Nevada Memorial, they took it upon themselves to teach us this stuff. And we basically learned on the job how to do it and helped them in the emergency room.
Dan Netsky, shortly after leaving the Navy, started work at Mercy.
And in 1973, we came back to Las Vegas, and I was scouring the town for a job. And I asked somebody that I knew that worked at Metro if they knew of anybody, and they turned me on to Mercy. So I showed up there, filled out my application, and handed it to him. He says, well, how much experience have you had? And I told him none. And he said, what kind of background do you have? I said, I was a Navy corpsman. He said, you're hired. And that was the extent of, the interview. He gave me a blue shirt and said, go right along with this crew, and if you like it, you can stay.
We were working then schedules of 5 days, 24 hours a day, with 2 days off.
We were living out of a house and a building where Frankie's exists now. And we used to take calls by sleeping in the house or just hanging around, sitting on a white picket fence out there, playing poker, pool, whatever. And whoever happened to be most senior that day or wanted to take a particularly good call would hop in the ambulance and go run the call. At that time, you could probably get anywhere in this valley within 10 minutes. And I'm talking all the way to Nellis or out to Rainbow, and the town really didn't go much farther than that back then.
19-year-old Bill Young became an EMT to work ski patrol in Utah while at college. Summer break changed his life.
I went down to Mercy Ambulance because a couple of my high school buddies, Chris and David Manzi, who were two twin brothers, graduated from Gorman, were good friends of mine, and they worked there full time. I started riding along, and I enjoyed it, and I was there almost every day in the evening, and I'd ride for 6, 8, 10 hours, and I'd go home and sleep for a few, and go pour concrete for my father in the morning, get back up and do it again the next day. Well, towards the middle or end of the summer, the state had announced that we were going to join California, who was our neighbor, and had just started the first paramedic program in their fire departments in LA, and that's how I got hired. I was offered a job to replace one of the students that went to the paramedic school, and I took it without even thinking about it, and gave up college football, and just dropped. And my parents had, they were just disgusted with me.
Dennis remembers one day he had a third rider.
When the year I was getting on the PD, probably within about 3 or 4 months of me leaving to get hired on the police department, a young guy came over named Bob Forbes, and he showed up over there one time, and somebody said, hey, this kid here wants to ride third man on a rig. Well, it was like dragging a stepchild around out there, just don't touch nothing, Well, I end up leaving, and he gets to work there, and the next thing I know, Bob Forbes owns the company. How ironic is that this guy that wanted to ride third man on a rig, and we were telling him he was lucky he could open our door for us, now owns the place, So you got to kind of watch out for some of them people. It could come back to haunt you,
Bob had just graduated from Long Beach State with a business degree, and he was teaching over at Gorman High School. The way he got involved with this is he was interested in EMS, and during the summer he would work part-time with us here. Matter of fact, one of my first summers here, Bob and I were partners on the street. During that time, he was made an offer to give it a go at running the company because nobody else was. And he said, sure. I think for about the first 2 months, he mainly was washing gurneys and wheelchairs in the back because we had this huge backstock of equipment that was just sitting around from the medical supply. And that's how Bob got started in it.
Well, the company was about 4 ambulances. 3 of them probably ran sometimes, and 1 of them was always in the garage being repaired. They were high-top Suburbans. They had chrome wheels, little skinny tires, and 500 horsepower motors that were chained to the chassis on the torque side of the motor so that they wouldn't tear the motor mounts out. And the guys that worked for us drove them just as fast as they would go. 100 miles an hour down Main Street from Charleston to Fremont, and things like that.
Back in 1975, I know that it seems like a long time ago, and it was a long time ago. I came out to Las Vegas from Georgia on a round-trip Delta Airlines ticket on a vacation. And I wanted to see how EMS was in the big city. So I came down to Mercy Ambulance and to ask to ride third to see what it was like. I come into the building, I see Dan Netsky laying on the couch waiting on a call, and Mike Murphy's over here reading a magazine, and Dyke Mandelbaum is dispatching, so I asked about riding third, and Dan was happened to be paired up with Ken Riddle that day and was working, so they let me ride third for 24 hours. And at the end of their shift, I had run more calls in 24 hours than I had the previous 12 months in Georgia. I was hooked.
Well, the first paramedic class was a pilot program sponsored by the state of Nevada, and Governor O'Callaghan was the governor at the time, and he supported it 100%, and it was done through the community college. There were 6 paramedics from Mercy, or 6 medics from Mercy. Mike Rogers, Kerry Von Arquity, Jeff Ellis, Austin Potenza, Mike Murphy, and myself.
Linda Netsky was a nurse at Sunrise Hospital ER. At the time, EMS in Clark County began to change forever.
And then the first paramedic class was going through during the same kind of time period. They needed people to go out and ride and do evaluations, etc., help them with their skills, where now you have preceptors and all these other kinds of things. So I'm out there riding along, and sometime in there, I never went back. I would work at the hospitals periodically because, you had to work 3 or 4 jobs just to keep it together. But in reality, I never went back.
Young Mary Garber grew up in Southern California and was one of the first females to apply to the newly formed California Paramedic Program. After graduation, she got a call.
I can't remember the connection, but I got a call from Bobby, and Robert Forbes. He wanted me to come up and interview in Las Vegas. So I came out here, we had the interview, and it was just so amazing. This was such an opportunity because there was no women paramedics in the state of Nevada. This was all new. He was so progressive. He was always thinking outside the box. And so he brought me in outside that box. And it was a hard journey because Dr. Ghanem actually sat me, I can see it to this day, sitting across from his desk. And he looked me straight in the eye and goes, "We don't want any out-of-state paramedics, and we don't want any women paramedics." So that was my challenge. So it made me sad, but I realized I didn't bite off more than I could chew, but I had a big journey ahead of me. Eventually, I got everything done, and all of a sudden now I'm the darling. Everybody, oh my God, we have a woman paramedic. It was all over the news stations, the governor coming down, it was on every program, and I happen to have this picture. This is the governor of Nevada, Michael Callahan, came down to personally present me with my reciprocity for the state of Nevada to practice.
Alan Albatis was a musician and also a talented artist who decided a change was in order.
And I was hired by Nevada Power, Stewart Title Building, right across from the old Southern Nevada Memorial Hospital. And I was bored to tears. Great job, benefits, everything. But looking out of my window, I could see ambulances and fire engines. And at that time, emergency was a big deal. Is that Gage and DeSoto? Yeah. So I said, that looks like it might have some oomph to it. And sure enough, it turns out it did. Like a lot of years' work.
Marjorie Willis Holland became an EMT motivated by babysitting. But that decision turned into much more.
And I went down to Mercy Ambulance, and they brought out a gurney, and they put Howard Carson on it, who weighs a good 300 pounds, and with Dan Netsky on the other side, and they said, okay, lift this gurney up to your thigh or your waist or whatever. And so I bent over and I squatted down and I lifted Howard. It was tough, and I lifted Howard Carson up on the gurney, and I was hired there, and then they put me through paramedic school, and I was the first woman to go through Nevada's paramedic school. I was the second woman on the ambulance as a paramedic.
The company was on such poor financial footing. I mean, we'd get our paycheck on Friday, and we'd run around the corner to Frankie's bar. Our office was right there. We'd get the check, and Frankie's would cash paychecks on Friday. We'd run over there, and about the 5th or 6th check to get it passed. After that, the bank would decline it because they were out of money in the account. That happened to me so many times. I'd get discouraged and disgusted. I'd worked all week. We got paid weekly in those days, and I'd have no paycheck, or they'd get it to you eventually, 2 or 3 days later. They always said it was a bookkeeping issue or whatnot.
Well, they were trying to start making it more of a professional organization. We'd finally started getting some paramedics.
So we were kind of on our own. They gave us a drug box. We had 2 Datascope defibrillators and 3 crews. So one crew every day didn't have a Datascope, and the other 2 crews did.
We were paired up with each other, and we each had our own ambulance that we took care of. The main problem we had was that we didn't have a mechanic, a standalone mechanic or a mechanic space with a garage. They finally built one behind Sunrise Hospital
with 4 stalls for the ambulances, and we had a mechanic that was a rather interesting character. He was one of the first ones that we had. He was really good friends with most of the ladies at the Palomino Club. And for a nominal fee, they would come over and do a little dance for him in the garage every once in a while.
So we had to terminate him, and we made a search for a good mechanic.
And he had all of his high-powered tools in the back of a van. Pulled up one day with this New York accent and hopped out of the car and started at it.
One way or another, we were lucky enough to find Frank.
Things were not always smooth sailing for Mercy.
And I had the unfortunate experience of waking up at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning to respond to a call. I was at the substation at Valley Hospital, and we go out there at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. I remember it was dead of winter, it was cold, and right there where our ambulance was supposed to be was an oil spot and 2 medical bags in our coats that we left in the ambulance rig, and the ambulance had been repossessed in the middle of the night by the owners. We lost all our ambulances that night, and I called Bob Forbes and woke him up, and he was just beside himself.
Janet Smith got her start riding a volunteer ambulance in Wells, Nevada.
If you didn't work for Mercy in 1975, you didn't work as an EMT. So let me tell you, I'm in Wells, Nevada, ironing clothes, and I'm watching the first episode of Emergency with Johnny Gage and Roy DeSoto. And I was going to do that. And there weren't any girls on that program doing it, but I was going to do that. And I think I signed up to be a volunteer as soon as I got my Red Cross First Aid badge, and then later my EMT badge. But I was so inspired by that program, and I thought, what a wonderful way to spend your life taking care of people who are really hurting and sick.
For Kathy Rundell, it started as a high school project.
I first became aware of Mercy Ambulance in high school and needed to write a high school report on paramedics. So I went to Mercy Ambulance, which was located on West Charleston behind Frankie's Bar in a house back there. In 1979, I became an EMT part-time for Mercy Ambulance and made a little less than $3 an hour. We bought our own uniforms, blue pants, blue shirt, and either brown or black boots. Bought our own badges, our own equipment. We went to Wonder World or one of the stores and bought a Plano fishing tackle box and borrowed some supplies from the hospital and stocked our tackle boxes, and that was our first aid kits.
The caliber of medics we had was something. I mean, I think of folks that have gone, Paul Young, such a good medic, and Ralph Gilliam was a great medic, and just that core group. I mean, we really created a culture I am proud of. We put ourselves out there in the limelight, and so many people wanted to achieve what Bob and his team were able to achieve. And it's all on the backs of some really great medics. Great reputation, and to be the only show in town, we really had a chance to showcase what private EMS could do, and working with some great fire guys as well, and police. I mean, we really made this a safe place.
John Stanton recalls a shift he'll never forget.
And I can remember running a shift with Dan, and that was that we ran every single call imaginable. We, of course, had a cardiac arrest. We had we delivered a baby. We had a train versus car down at Tropicana and Valley View before they built the underpass, and Trop ran across the tracks, and some Mustang didn't make it, and the train carried it about a half mile down the tracks. We had a knifing, we had family disputes, we had KOTUs. We even had one fella down behind the Union Plaza that was sleeping on the tracks, and the train cut his lower legs off, and Dan transported his legs, was in the back with him, and another unit brought the patient in, but Dan and I brought the legs in. And I swore up and down I'd never work with Dan again because he was bad karma.
So I forgot. 2-8 is Kathy needs you to kind of shuffle over to your right.
Over the years, Mercy and some medics had a little time in the spotlight.
Take it easy.
Get in your car and follow this ambulance. I want this man followed for 24 hours a day.
In The Gauntlet, star and director Clint Eastwood designed the movie Ambulance after two real Mercy ambulances working the streets at the time. For markings Unit 86 and vehicle type Unit 89.
Camera speed. Mark.
November 21st, 1980. The MGM fire.
And I was living in Boulder City at the time, and we were coming to work in the morning and came over the hill and saw this smoke coming off the valley floor. And I said to my wife at the time, somebody's going to be really busy today.
Dan, maybe we ought to just turn around.
And I turned on the radio.
Smoke is just billowing out of the main casino area. The palm trees alongside the building are so hot they've caught on fire and are burning at this time. Metro units have got the area surrounded. Paramedic units are on the scene trying to help people.
It was a long day. We were just getting off a shift. Yeah, we were just ready to turn the rig in. And we saw the header. Of course, by then they got multiple calls. 11, I believe, was right across the street. And so when we pulled in, I just got there in time to watch the overhang by Valet roll, fire, and two palm trees burst into flame.
But I can remember those first few moments and thinking, what am I doing? Where am I? This is a historical, weird, crazy, cataclysmic day in everyone's lives.
What did you see when you got here?
a lot of people really panicky. There was hundreds of people just breaking the glass out from the windows, taking sheets and trying to come down from 30 floors down. Unfortunately, a lot of the people were Spanish speaking, and it was very difficult to communicate to them. They were so panicky, we were afraid they were going to jump from the 20th floor, and as you know, some of them did.
Got to work, got an ambulance, went right straight to the hotel. Started transporting patients by the ambulance full, as many as 13, 14 patients in one ambulance at a time.
And it was just shuttling all day, back and forth, back and forth. Then they took us off of that to go through the hotel with Dr. Ravenholt, a Florida Time, to confirm, and he'd leave a big X on the door with the number of fatalities in the room, or whether it was clear. So, yeah, long day.
So we spent basically the day either at one of the triage. We assisted to the roof loading helicopters from basically 8 o'clock in the morning until we were called and told we had to be on the news.
It was kind of like, is there a bathroom? Do we have to lift anything? Is it warm? We'll do it.
After literally catching a breath from the MGM disaster, the phone rang in Mercy Dispatch.
Yeah, we've had a major high-rise fire at the Hilton. Hilton? Yeah, Las Vegas Hilton. Fire control by. Bye. Hello, who's this? I need you guys to go. I need 89. I got 86. We got a high-rise fire at the Hilton. Okay, bye. Level P89, go Snake Code 3, Bob. Yeah. We got a high-rise fire at the Hilton. I've got 3 units on the way over. Okay. 2528 is setting up a command post on the east side. 29 is 97 in the area. 27 is on his way en route. Well, what's the callback status at this point? Be advised we've got about 99% coming in.
I think what Bob did is really bring some prestige to the business. He was so good on his feet. His leadership during the MGM fire also really caught the attention of EMS leaders all over the country. Everybody wanted him to speak at their conferences. I mean, we learn by the disasters that happen, and we have to learn from each other, and it's that generosity. I think Bob was really generous, and he really gave everybody a chance, and a lot of second chances.
If I had a young supervisor or somebody just starting and I could see they had the potential acumen to do this, man, I'd try and plug them into different programs. I'd get them into the school system maybe. I'd encourage them to run for office of some sort. I would have them do community projects. I would have them do something other than just focus on the ambulance business. I mean, not to say that's not critical and their time is valuable. If you're going to develop somebody's talent, you better develop it early on so that when they do have to take that bold step to the next step, they're prepared for it.
Dennis Nolan, like many, started at Mercy right out of high school. In this rare video, he and Rick DaCosta are seen on a call downtown. Most all agree it was a fun time to be in EMS, but the life lessons learned helped them navigate through life.
It was a lot of fun. I tell you what, for that time I worked there full time and the part-time stuff and the people I met and the time and the experiences I had for a young guy, it was great. I'm glad I did that. I mean, my friends were bagging groceries and bussing tables and doing whatever they wanted, and I'm out there running around in an ambulance in the middle of everything. And I said I really loved it, and that's probably why I went to be a police officer. You know.
I gotta get my composure. A gal came up to me and she goes, "Aren't you Mary Garber?" And I go, "Yeah, I am." You know, it shocked me because, you know, this is 40 years ago. And she goes, "I want to thank you for what you did, because what you did, paving the way, I can now do what I love and support my family." And that was gold to me.
why I learned a lot about life. You know, the first time somebody dies in your hands, you're there, you buy your stuff with them in the back of the ambulance, and you realize that they've just died, and there's nothing more you can do, and you've given it your best, and you think a little bit more about life in those situations. And it made me grow up and really started doing something important. And I felt every day when I went to work at Mercy Ambulance, I was a very important person, and what a good feeling that was.
KQL 945, Mercy Ambulance, out.